get to this estradiol. I'm sorry,
Yes.
estradiol people.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, how do you want to proceed here, Rick? Who's going to lead the discussion?
Well, I think Latimer should lead because we pushed him off last week and said we'll discuss it this week. So, and I also want to say, Lee Balin, you asked me why can we have a special session? We've had a special session, Mr. Balin. And if you look on I thought I referenced it in the email, but if I didn't, I've been trying to get to it from the beginning. I'll put it in there, but we had a fantastic session a year and a half or so ago with Dr. Wassersug.
Not at all.
And I'll put it in there and you can listen to that session, and we've got this session. So we try to cater to the estradiolites.
Rick, that session a year and a half ago was long before the published results of the patch trial. The landscape is very different now.
Well, Rick, I'll give a quick 1, 2, 3. With the patch trial being in the back in front of our minds. So virtually everybody on the program today has been on ADT. It's extraordinarily effective anti-cancer therapy, controls prostate cancer for long periods of time, but it has a set of adverse events that we all hear frequently are sometimes very troublesome. And there's a pharmacologic industry that's developed to address the adverse events of ADT. And I won't list them all, but bone health, bone preservation is one. And there is a number of medications that are advised to preserve bone health. They have their own set of adverse events. They're expensive. They require monitoring. With transdermal estrogen, that issue is taken off the table. Hot flashes, we all hear about fever, burning up, hot flashes. Again, a series of medications, oxybutynin and others that have their own side effects. So again, hot flashes mostly resolved with transdermal estradiol. The question is transdermal estradiol safe? Because there's a back history of oral estrogens increasing cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. That's been well documented. But the transdermal delivery, which avoids absorption through the GI tract and the result in liver metabolism of a number of thrombotic proteins, bypasses the problematic adverse event of cardiovascular morbidity. And the other is it effective? And the large patch trial, 700 patients in each arm, LHRH analog versus transdermal estradiol, followed over 10 plus years, shows that it's equally effective in controlling disease, i.e. time to metastases, and it follows the necessary criteria of all androgen deprivation therapies, namely lowering the T to castrate levels. Now, I was surprised that the NCCN guideline says that an agent is effective ADT if it lowers T to less than 50 nanograms per deciliter. We all are focused on less than 20, and the patch trial focused on less than 20. So it is very effective androgen deprivation therapy, avoiding a large number of the side effects. I didn't mention cardiovascular and metabolic that are associated with traditional ADT, and it is extraordinarily less expensive. So with that said, I'll answer questions, and Richard is my co-worker in the transdermal estradiol initiative, so we both will be available to hopefully give you more information and solve some of the questions and problems associated with this new therapy that's really old therapy under a different and much safer delivery system.
I'd like Dr. Wassersug to have a chance to say something to it up front.
I would be happy to, but I also want to say that I'd like to actually hear. Larry in Alaska raised his hand because he's also working with us. If people want to, we may not cover it because we have so little time, I guess. But you can go to a website called Estradiol Initiative. You write out estradiolinitiative.org, and you'll find all about our efforts to try to make this an improved treatment. I also would like to hear from Alfred, because I understand he's almost been on estradiol as long as I have. And you mentioned him, Rick, at the beginning. But I could get to the question about gynecomastia, because whereas Paul briefly summarized all of the reasons why transdermal estradiol is a great alternative for ADT, all treatments have side effects, and gynecomastia is one of them. But if Rick says it's okay, could I, and Larry, thank you for waving your hand, but could I'd love to hear Alfred's comments about it. Is that okay, Rick? Because you raised it.
Alfred, yeah, no, I mean, I think we should start with, as I said, and forgive me, Dr. Paul and Dr. Wassersug and Richard for not starting with you, but that's what I was thinking. And maybe the context here is that it was all raised by Robert Reich going public on his blog, the 1.5 million read, that he was choosing to use E2, estradiol. I have put Estradiol Initiative, just as it sounds, in the chat window. If it's wrong, please correct it, Dr. Wassersug.
Good work.
And Al, where are you? Speak up.
I'm right here listening, and I have to say first that this is all music to my ears, because since Dr. Myers retired, I've been kind of like lost in the desert, because no one is interested in talking about estradiol. So the Dr. Schultz in California, he tolerated it. He said he would never recommend it. Belusic in Miami, he tolerates it, but wouldn't recommend it. Dr. E, when I saw her in Houston, she said, "Oh my God, you got to get off of that. It's going to ruin your heart," or something. I don't know what she said, but she was very adamantly against it. So I was diagnosed in 1995, and I had surgery, and they found it in lymph nodes, and eventually I started Lupron, and I was on it for 7, 8 years, something like that. And of course I had all the side effects. The one thing I had going for me was I was still young. I started it when I was still in my 40s. So maybe I tolerated it a little better than most, but it still was, you had, loss of libido, loss of, the libido was just completely gone. And then there was a lot of talk about doing intermittent therapy. And Logothetis, well, I was seeing Logothetis at MD Anderson at the time, and he was adamant that not to do that. And then I heard that Dr. Myers had prostate cancer, and he'd opened his own practice. So I went to see him and told him about my dilemma, and he said, "Well, let's try this estradiol." And I did, and it was like a miracle, the difference between the two. And that was in 2006. So I've been on it 20 years now. And I would say the first 10 or so, well, my PSA was undetectable at the time I went to see Myers. It was less than 0.1. That was MD Anderson's definition of undetectable. Dr. Myers was less than 0.01, and when he started doing my PSA, it was 0.03, 0.05, 0.02, but it never really got to less than 0.01, which he was looking for. But anyway, it went to, my PSA went to under 0.1 again, and stayed that for a number of years. I don't know, 8, 10 years, something like that. And so the big side effect that I wasn't terribly exactly prepared for was the gynecomastia. And I already had it from 7 years of Lupron, but it got much worse with the estradiol. I eventually had a double mastectomy. That was, I don't know, 8, 10 years ago, something like that. And so that issue is gone, and I'm still on it. Plus other treatments that I'm doing, but my testosterone is well under 20, although it doesn't get measured as much as it used to. And but anyway, I'm really glad to hear this discussion, and I hope it helps somebody else.
I think I can comment on a bunch of things here, and I know that Bob Schwartz was concerned about gynecomastia. Alfred, you said the gynecomastia got much worse. If I were to describe it in terms of breast cup size, would you say it was a B, C, or D cup size? Like, are we talking
easily a C.
That's unusual. What's your BMI, body mass index? I can't tell from your picture there.
26, 27, something like that.
That's a little high. Okay. We just done, this isn't published yet, but it's on that website. We just did a review, and this is we'll get to Bob Schwartz's, although I can't see him quite on this screen right now. I guess I see him at the top. Hi. All right. So we just, on our website, there's a review. We done the literature on how much gynecomastia is actually induced by external estrogen when men are exposed to it. And interestingly enough, we had a population we could go to. And these are the trans women, men who wish to be women, who go on high dose estrogen in order to induce breast development. And Paul and I are authors on this manuscript we're just about to submit. And what we find is from the literature, and these are mature men, average age was in their 30s or 40s, not as old as us, but it appears that the amount of gynecomastia that's produced with the estrogen is somewhat age dependent. And if you are a teenager, you may get a lot. If you're in our age group, the average is a cup or less. And I can show you what that's like. That's what it's like. All right. So now I'm going to get back to Bob Schwartz. When you went for radiation to protect you against gynecomastia, I would love to know, and you're muted by the way, how much gynecomastia the doctor told you you were likely to get from the estrogen. What did they tell you?
They just said it would be a small percentage. They didn't have any exact numbers or anything like that.
Okay, so maybe we have a very quick discussion. Alfred, yours was very large and it was bothersome. I assume psychologically they were not concerned about a medical problem. It was an emotional and medical issue. Is that right?
No, it was unsightly. I mean, I put a golf shirt on, and it was ridiculous to look at myself. Okay. Definitely an emotional issue.
All right. So obviously that's concerned. That is a side effect, and for some people, an A cup may be considered unacceptable. We have another paper that has just been resubmitted, revised, where we looked at patients' concern about it, and in fact, there are. I know Larry's here. A couple of us had a survey. You know about this because we ran this survey about a year ago. We have feedback from about 800 prostate cancer patients about their concerns from various forms of ADT. And it turns out we have data on over 20 prostate cancer patients that are using transdermal estradiol. And we looked at their bother levels. And I, like Al, was on a standard Lupron for several years. I hated the hot flashes, the weight gain, the fatigue, etc. I wasn't even aware back then that the osteoporosis was also a risk. All right, I went on the estradiol and I felt a hell of a lot better. The history is on that old tape. In fact, it was a year or more ago for Rick when I did a session on estradiol. That was the first time I ever came on the fact that I'm actually using estradiol because it's off label. And for the androgen deprivation educational program, and you can look that up. That's a free program we have in Canada. There's a book on it. I didn't mention the fact that I was on ADT with estradiol, but I was on Lupron for several years. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer at age 52. I have been on transdermal estradiol for my own hormonal therapy for over 22 years. Okay, And I've had we did the basic science. I had a colleague who's now a faculty member at the University of Sydney. We got rats, we castrated them, we gave them estrogen. We showed that we could preserve REM sleep, which is cognitively protective. And the women who go on estrogen at menopause will point out that the estrogen is cognitively protective. We showed that the male rats that had been castrated but given estrogen started going after the female rats. Now, they weren't going to be mounting them, they were castrated, but they showed interest. And there's reason to believe that this can be not only protective to the patients, but protective to their partnerships. Because if you have a partner, your partner might like to know that you're interested in them somewhat. So there are all sorts of aspects. That, by the way, is uninvestigated in humans. But I'm now, as I say, 22 years on it. You get my personal story. But right now, the biggest challenge we're facing is really, and this is brought up in Robin Reich's thing, the biggest challenge we're facing is estradiol for ADT is so cheap that no drug companies are interested in it. And all of these many big name doctors have been supported by the drug companies that make the expensive drugs. and they're not particularly interested. You might, if you've got a person that says, "Oh no, you shouldn't go on it," you might ask them, "What are the drug companies that have sponsored them, and what agents do they make in the ADT market?" And almost all the big drug companies are making the bone protective agents, which you have to take if you're on Lupron long term, or the other drugs. They're expensive. There's games being played here that are huge. And although Paul is my colleague on this project, Larry is a very activist patient who's engaged, and several other people are working on it. We never imagined we'd be up against such money issues and barriers, and Reich brought it forward. We can't, I'm in Canada, I'm based in Vancouver. We can't get the FDA or Health Canada, the equivalent here, to move on this because you have to have a drug company to approach these agencies to say, we want to market it. And none of the agencies, none of the drug companies right now are jumping forward wanting to market it. It is a huge challenge. And Paul and now Larry, I think you agree, this is way bigger than we ever imagined. And it was like, wow, when Robin, an expert in labor and economics and politics, ran that essay, and you should read it, we realized we've got a huge problem. We got the huge investment firms are investing in the drug companies and the insurance companies. And you would think it'd be in their interest for us patients to have the costs down. No, it's in the interest of their investors to have the costs up. And this is a shocking. And Paul said, this costs, like 2 orders of magnitude cheaper than Lupron, Orgovix. Well, Orgovix, my ADT costs me 1/400th of what Orgovix costs at this particular time. I'm using a gel product.
Yeah, and Dr. Wassersug, the Orgovix is a fraction of the cost of the Lupron right now. I mean, the Lupron has become outrageous. So the Lupron is a lot more expensive than, ridiculously, is a lot more expensive than the Orgovix. Do we have people who would like to comment, ask questions, thoughts? Anybody? I see no hands up. Now I see some hands up. Dennis Correa, first of all.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the genetic differences might be in the men that this estradiol seems to work for versus anyone else, or the type of their prostate cancer, the PSAs, and how, metastasis basis. There's a lot of variables, I think, between us. And, has anybody looked at that?
It is unstudied. Even Paul doesn't know. So I was talking with a colleague who's an MD, internal medicine expert, about a grant application, which they want to look at biomarkers. The presumption is that, as with BRCA and so forth, that if you have a high risk of breast cancer, estradiol may not be advised, and we can't speak to that. The data are not there yet, and so one should be cautious. However, so far we've been told by the Patch Stampede people who are doing the trial on survivorship out of the UK that they have not seen an elevated risk of breast cancer. But the genetics should be done. The genetic screening is, as you've heard all the time, the AnCan model is you should have some genetic screening. Yeah, I think that's wise. but we don't have it. But if the issues are you have a risk of gynecomastia, which in the extreme case can be dealt with a simple mastectomy, or cognitive impairment, sleep deprivation, osteoporosis, full loss of libido, as side effects from the standard ADT agents, I can't see a reason why anyone would want to necessarily stay with an LHRH drug. But if you're going to stay with it, then you might look at using low dose add-back estradiol, because we men mostly make our own estradiol directly from our testosterone. We go on the ADT, LHRH drugs, we lose our estradiol. Many of our side effects are due to not loss of testosterone, but loss of estradiol. So at least if your doctor says, I won't put you, I don't think you're a candidate for, or I don't know enough about it, or it isn't approved yet, it hasn't got NCCN or FDA approval yet, I don't think you should go on it. I'm not lucky, I'm not comfortable prescribing off label. You can say, well, can I get a little bit of it to replace what I've lost? And that seems to me a very strong argument. And we're hearing more and more about patients who are presenting that, who have gone back, for instance, to their GPs and said, oh, yeah, I'll write you a script. I'm writing for women all the time. And more it's coming out for women that staying on estradiol when they're getting menopausal symptoms can be protective. So we're just following that. All of those menopausal symptoms can be alleviated with low-dose estradiol. I'll take another question if there are any.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
I'd like
Hold
to
on,
know
hold
whether-
on, Jack. Jack.
Well, I had my hand up a long time, so I'd like to ask a question.
Okay, but check the top, and you'll see that there's a lot of hands up, and we got to take people in order. We'll come to you. I mean, don't get upset with me. We've got a lot of people in the room. Got to respect the moderators. We will get down everybody. We'll get everybody as long as people wait. Len, why don't you take over, please?
You're muted.
Sorry about that. So I don't know who's first or who's left. At the top of the screen, are those the most recent hands that went up?
Yes, the hands are always in order, so you can go down, and that's the order.
Okay.
But you had a question, and you're a moderator.
Yeah, but I'll keep myself in line. So we have Lee Balin. You go first, and then Bob Schwartz, and then me.
Thank you. I've become a bit of a fan of the estradiol as a replacement for ADT, although I still have a healthy bit of skepticism and I'm working through it. But I've become a lot more interested in low dose. And I'd like to know if there's any material out there from anecdotal publication or studies, whether they're controlled or not, published or not, that I can look to and talk to both my PC doc and my MO about.
Paul, do you want to take that?
No, Richard, you use the add-on and have experience with it, so you go ahead.
Yeah. So there's no formal rules, but again, where the cancer centers, for instance, may not prescribe it, and I'll give you a story here from Vancouver. We have a provincial healthcare system. We have a provincial cancer system, BC Cancer for British Columbia Cancer. They are not allowed to prescribe off-label. And I've known now a couple of guys who've simply said, I can't get it. My oncologist says I won't get it. They've gone back to the GP, and the GP said, sure, I'll write you a script. So now they prescribe it as you would prescribe it to women. The issue about dosing is real simple. If you're trying to get rid of the hot flashes and not getting woken up in the middle of the night by them so that you're fatigued and at risk of a car accident during the day, you start with a low dose and you rise it till you get control of the hot flashes. If you start to get very nipple sensitivity and breast development, you back down. Now, the point about that is that as with the women, there's no one single right dose. For the women, based on their body mass size and so forth, that they often have to play around. But playing around with a patch, putting on one patch or two patches, or leaving a patch on an extra day or taking it off a day early, all of that is possible. with the standard ADT transdermal products that are marketed for women. But you do have to get a doctor willing to prescribe it off-label. And that's typically easier in our province to get from a GP than it is from a cancer center, where they have particular rules based on the fact that they're provincially funded and very highly structured and regulated. Lee, did I answer your question?
You answered my question about the use, effect, and maybe a way to get it. I'm looking for something, again, published anecdotes or published studies, whether they're RTCs or single arms or whatever, that would be helpful for low dose.
There aren't, and there won't be.
There's nothing.
Well, that's because with every single drug for cancer, you try it on the worst patients before it ever gets to the lowest ones. But if you think about the Women's Health Initiative, where they said, oh, you shouldn't be using transdermal products 20 years ago, it's taken them 20 years to revise it. So nobody's going to run that trial now, because we know the reason, and it's much more important. Is it going to affect survival? Is it going to affect side effects and quality of life management? So there's not, I don't believe, Paul, am I right? I don't know of anybody who's has done or is going to bother to do how much better you feel when you get some estradiol back in your body. But there's also no evidence that there's any benefit on losing your estradiol. I'm sorry, I'm not.
I hear you. Okay. Unfortunately, the answer isn't helpful at where I am now. It looks like if I'm going to try it, I'm going to be a trial of one on my own, and I may be going that way.
Oh, you won't be a trial of one. There are lots of folks who can give you historical records of how they feel and how much better their lives are now. I will tell you that I had the experience of having, after going off Lupron and going on transdermal estradiol, 5 years later going on a clinical trial that required me to go back on Lupron. I was delighted to try a new combination of medication at the time, but boy, it was a bear to go back on Lupron, and I was delighted once again to go back on estrogen. So I had the repeat, not only one go, but the two go of recovering my well-being and health status with regard to transdermal estradiol. And another thing with regard to the sexual interest issue, and I explain it this way. On Lupron, I would go into a room where Linda Carter, AKA Wonder Woman, would be, and I would not have paid the least bit of attention. On estrogen, I took notice. So, I mean, it's a subtle difference, but it's a very meaningful one with regard to sexual interest.
Yeah. And it really matters to the partners. And this is something that doesn't get mentioned, but over 25 years ago, out of Memorial Sloan Kettering, they showed that when there's psychological side effects for going on Lupron, they're more severe for the partners of us patients than for our patients themselves. Why? Because we're on Lupron, we forget sometimes that we have a partner and they don't know what they did wrong and they feel abandoned and they carry the burden. And this, I would love to see us study. Anybody wants to help us support that study, I hope eventually we'll get it done. But I think that we're going to show that the benefit of the transdermal estradiol is double what we expect. It's going to help us patients, and it's going to help us our partners as well. But that's as yet under investigation.
So you want to go next?
Can I just let me say one final thing from my side, and then I'm going to turn my mic off. For some of us, and me at age 82, increased libido is not necessarily a benefit.
Yeah, but you have a partner.
Yeah, but there are a lot of folks who are 50 and 60 for whom it's a tremendous benefit. I was 65, and that was 20 years ago.
So can you just comment on a different aspect of estradiol, which is more in the line of what Bob Schwartz is doing, where we've got guys using estradiol to supplement LHRH and reduce the side effects, i.e. somebody on LHRH, maybe on a doublet therapy, but they're taking estradiol low dose to help them with side effects.
Richard, correct me if I'm wrong. The normal male serum estradiol level is approximately 70 to 80 picograms per ml. Maybe it's 50 or 40 as time goes on. So that with that dose, that's not enough to drop your T to castrate levels. You need to have triple that, up in the 200, 250. But it's perfectly adequate to supplement what you normally would have from aromatization of your testosterone to estrogen, which is your normal biological rhythm.
Yeah, and we're just putting things back into the normal position if we do it. But there won't be, as I said to Lee, there have not been trials, and they're not likely to be. You'd have to have a drug company fund it. Who's going to do it? No drug companies were interested. It's too cheap. So we'll let that trial and let Lee, unless you want to help fund it, we're never going to have it. And the same thing, Rick. I mean, that's the problem. Okay, there were a lot of other questions. I know.
Yeah, so Bob Schwartz, did Rick answer or ask your question, or do you still have another question?
I still have my question, Doc. If you could help me on this. What it is I am taking, like Rick said, as in combination with the other LHRHs. But what mine is for hot flashes. I'm getting like 7 to 9 of them a day, and they're getting very, very bad. And I talked to my doctor about it, and that's when my doctor suggested with me estradiol. And at the same time, we said estradiol. However, there's something we should think about before that to prevent having to have surgery afterwards, which is breast reduction surgery. And that's when radiation came up. So I went and had the radiation, and I just finished it off today. And I'd like to know approximately, if you have any idea anywhere in the number system, how many days you should wait before you start taking the estradiol after the end of radiation.
All right. Well, I'm not an MD. I would say you could start any time. The difference is I would have said you should have started at the first hot flash, personally. But there's no data on that, to be honest. But there's no evidence that there's any danger either. I mean, you're only going to be taking a low dose to control to replace the natural estradiol levels. So
it's 14 micrograms, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, that's low. I mean, so I don't see why you even have to worry. Start now, and if you start developing breast symptoms, you can back off. You will have.
And what I'm looking at in the future, doctor, is if this works out good, perhaps in the future, then going to this as a primary method, but first started at this level.
Yes, that's the patch trial has that as its purpose, to say that it's equally beneficial as the traditional Lupron LHRH analogs, antagonists, agonists that drop what's the sine qua non of ADT, a castrate T, whether you get it via antagonist, agonist, or estrogen negative feedback to your pituitary, the anti-cancer effect is equal.
I will go one step further because I'm just reading about this, and I was going to be talking in a few days with a gerontologist. It turns out estradiol appears to be, although it's secondary, not as strong evidence as we want, as to be cognitively protective. The loss of estrogen weakens your bones. There's a direct correlation between broken hips and cognitive impairment. So the estradiol both keeps your mineral densities high, protects you to some level from cognitive impairment, means you're less likely to break a hip. And it's becoming more and more clear the longer people are on the standard ADT agents, the more likely they are to end up needing bone protective agents or actually having fractures. Estradiol is triple or double, whatever, super protective and natural. We're talking, start with replacing what you're missing. But I want to make sure Len gets the next person in and wants to ask questions.
Let me just say thank you, doctor, and thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Len.
You keep touting a benefit that oral ADT causes a lot of fatigue, but if the estrogen is bringing your T level down below castrate, aren't you still going to get the same fatigue from estrogen?
No.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
No, well, you're either a monohormone deprived eunuch or a dual hormone deprived eunuch. With traditional ADT, you're absent testosterone and estrogen. Both of them play a role in well-being. With ADT, with transdermal estradiol, yeah, you're not going to have the testosterone muscle building mass that you would normally, but you have a level of benefit that is a step above ADT alone, where you are deprived of both hormones.
And I can add to that from the rat data. Now, again, this is work that I and my colleague Eric Waboa did. Hold on, Larry. And Jack still has a question. I know that. But estradiol in the rats improves sleep quality. We don't know whether rats have, but we know that rats don't have, or evidence. We don't have evidence that they have hot flashes, but we know that they slept better and they had better REM sleep. All right. So if you're sleeping better, you're less fatigued. Right there. So there's a mechanism for why the estrogen can be protecting against some of the massive fatigue associated with the standard agents.
I've also heard that it's less effective in later stage prostate cancer. Do you know anything about that?
I've written informally about that. And that is because of the mechanism of androgen suppression. We're now talking about high dose estrogen. When the cancer becomes castrate resistant, doesn't need testosterone, okay, there's no evidence that estrogen will help. The patch stampede people will be looking in that for advanced patients when they've accrued enough patients in the study. The study is ongoing, but they need long-term survival data. We don't have that yet. But at this point, and that's sad because people know that I'm out as a person who's used estrogen long-term, and I get these letters. We've tried this, we tried that. They're all failing now. Should we try estrogen? And there's no reason to presume that if you crashed your testosterone with Lupron, Zoladex, Orgovyx, whatever, that crashing with estrogen is going to help when the cancer no longer needs any hormone whatsoever. It can grow on its own and make its own internal testosterone. So I can't say it's bad, but there's no evidence that it's necessarily better or for the most advanced patients. And for the quality of life, my feeling is that eventually I would say start on, if you're going to go on ADT, start with estrogen to maintain good quality of life, to keep the brain working, to avoid the fatigue, to avoid the osteoporosis, et cetera. I mean, but we're a long way from that. But curiously, I actually had, in the last 2 days, a discussion with someone said, well, wait a second, would I be better if I didn't have, this is another patient who's had a prostatectomy. Could I have gone on high dose estrogen and not have had to have a prostatectomy? And we don't have any direct data from that except for one thing. And curiously, it's the trans women. And the trans women are at risk, they're genetic men, of getting prostate cancer. There are people collecting these data and trying to tell the trans women that they should still get a PSA test. However, now they have data out on how uncommon prostate cancer is in that population. And the answer basically is if you go on estrogen early enough at a high dose, I'm not necessarily recommending that, if you haven't had a biopsy, but it could be eventually much cheaper than a prostatectomy and maintain quality of life better than even the prostatectomy. Paul, you want to comment on that? Because it's the first time you heard me rant about that.
Yeah, it is the first time.
Well, what do you think? Can you imagine?
Okay, and so now, Richard, didn't you have a double mastectomy? I mean, you showed us your A cup, but you had a double mastectomy, didn't you, a few years ago?
No, I've never had a mastectomy.
You never did?
No, that's my breast.
Okay, somebody told me you did. Sorry.
No.
Okay, all right, I'll pass to the next. Jeff Wood, go ahead.
Am I understanding that you are constantly on it without a break, and AKA you don't get a holiday like you would with something else?
Why would I want a holiday? Why would I want a holiday?
Yeah, I mean, the reason you take a holiday or have intermittent ADT is to recover the adverse event issues, but absent those, no need to do so.
Right. And the truth is, my oncologist, his name is Kim Cheney, he's probably the most distinguished medical oncologist treating prostate cancer in Canada. After about 10 years in ADT, He said, well, why don't you stop it? You may have been cured. And I told him I'm a scientist. I was a scientist before I was a patient, and I don't think an N of 1 is a particularly good study. But he's so distinguished, I went off it. And in about 3 months, my PSA started climbing. And I had 3 positive PSA tests after that, and I went on it, and I never got off it again. Once I went off of it, but after that, I watched my testosterone climbing to get my dosing right. But I decided, why do I want a climbing PSA? Well, I mean, I'm not suffering. I'm doing pretty well for someone I'll be 80 in 2 months, and I'm still working full time to try to make estradiol available for patients easily and on label. And I can't see a reason to quit. But Jeff, that's a serious question. Why do you feel I'd want to go off it?
Boy, it's fun.
What's fun?
It's enjoyable to not be on anything.
All right. So for my comment about the rat study is the human brain is better on any gonadal hormone than none. Right. And if my choice is having none and having but then watching my PSA rise, I'd rather be on a female hormone, which feminizes me. Do I look feminized? Not really. All right. And be functional, than be dead. Those would be the choices, because if I had gone off it and stayed off of it, I would have definitely been dead by now. My first PSA test was 19, extracapsular extension, seminal vesicle involvement. They only took like 6 lymph nodes, so we don't know. But I mean, my PSA climbed fast enough. It was positive after my radical, was positive within a year on my salvage radiotherapy. I got micromets. I'm not going to let them grow.
What level do you keep your testosterone at?
What's my testosterone is below.
What level do you like to keep it at?
Below 20. And in fact, it's way down. I've been on so long, it's way, way down. There you go.
Dr. Jack, you're up.
I was wondering about therapeutic levels, whether or not there's a particular range you'd like to achieve, Dr. Paul, with patients or with yourself. Do you not operate that way with the estradiol patches? Like you mentioned, 70 to 80 being normal when you have a normal testosterone level and you go through the aromatization. But if you have no testosterone like you and you're castrated, well, is there a particular therapeutic level that you try to achieve with estradiol?
Yeah, roughly, I'll say in the range of 250. The patch trial, that was the median level, and it depends on when the blood draw is taken. So you have to have a program of consistency. The highest levels are between 12 and 24 hours after you put the patch on. So you have a lab draw program so that you're following that scheduling. But an interesting point is, and some folks on transdermal estrogen kind of get hooked on the fact that if I drive my estrogen level higher, I'll do better. No, you just have to have an estrogen level that suppresses your T level, because T is the critical issue. And if you're suppressing T at 200 and 225 and 250, which is, I'll say, 95% of the time, that's what you follow. And after a while, having known the rhythm of my patches and the blood work, I do it relatively infrequently now, because I'm convinced that I've got it down pat. And when I do my T levels, they're below 10.
So you're titrating to less than 20. Is that what
Yes.
you're doing?
Yes.
Both. No. I want to say one more thing. Jack, I want to add one thing to it. I kept for years my testosterone and estradiol data, and I correlated them, and there's no correlation. It bounces all over the place. Why? Because estrogen can actually regulate its own receptor density. So it's going to be naturally fluctuating. And Larry may have some comments on this, because we've been having a sort of a soft, ongoing discussion about this. But and Larry's very much numbers. He's smiling now. And then he has had his hand up. He's been very much number oriented, just chasing, trying to find the right dose of estradiol. But it is, as Paul just said, it's whether you're successful in getting the testosterone down. And it has to be monitored for each individual. There's not an absolute right constant dose that we're aiming for, or that it is easy to maintain. So you look at the testosterone most of all. Larry, do you want to add anything to that in response to Jack's concern about trying to get the right dose of estrogen?
Yeah, and I've got 4 questions that I really wanted to address, but I'll address just that one. When I first started ADT, I couldn't get estradiol, so I went on Orgovyx for a while. And then I did get an estradiol prescription. And so I had weekly hormone and PSA testing, as well as CBC and CMP, because I was watching all the parameters I could possibly watch to make sure I wasn't doing myself harm. So I have a lot of rigorous data, which I will share with anyone who wants it. Weekly PSA and hormones, monthly CMP, CBC, and it showed a drop in testosterone and PSA that began immediately after starting estradiol. And when I went off of estradiol, I only had 1 week's worth. The Orgovyx continued it along the same path, along the slope. And then when I stopped the Orgovyx and went back on estradiol, when I finally got a prescription, it continued on the same asymptotic curve. So they are effective equally. And I'll stop right there. I have 3 more answers to give, but I'll wait till I'm called on.
Right.
Oh, I am using a higher dose of estradiol than the patch study did. So I have a little more generous breasts, but I'll address that with my next answer given out.
Gary Peters, you want to go?
Yeah, sorry, I had to get myself off mute. I'd like to ask Paul and Richard, actually both, what dose of the estradiol patches do you use to get your testosterone down that far?
I personally use there are a number of estradiol patches, 0.1 milligram. They vary in their ability to deliver, so they don't all deliver consistently. I use the DOTTI patch, and I use 2 to 3 patches twice a week, Monday and Thursday. Why 2 to 3? Because over the years, I've learned that works to keep my T below 20, below 10. Now the patch trial used 4 patches twice a week. And then when T went to less than 20, they backed down to 3. Whether they could have backed down further, they didn't. They kept up that particular regimen. But it varies. Richard, you use gels, so you can comment on that.
Well, 2 things. It says also on our website, it turns out not all the patches are the same. It turns out that the patch study got free patches from a drug company. That brand of patches are not currently available in North America. And furthermore, they weren't the best brands. But we have guidelines for the physicians who want to prescribe it, following, and we wish to follow closely the rigorous data available from the patch stampede trial. So that's on the website. But if you really want to drive the cost down, you use a high-dose transdermal gel. It's much easier, I found. I used the patches for several years, and then I went over using the gel. And when I said I could get my cost down to 1/400th of what the formal cost is, supposedly, formal cost for Orgovyx, is by using the gel at a high concentration. But that sounds bad. That is, you don't know, you want to know, what should I use? Tell me what I should use. But think of it more, that's right. This is right. This is personalized medicine. We're all different sizes. Some of us are big, some of us are little. And as with women using transdermal drugs, you have to dose it for the individual. So there is an issue in management. There's no one particular right dose. And in fact, the patch study found that out because they said, oh, we're going to start with this. And then they found the men were all over the place. Some men needed less, some men needed perhaps more. They had guidelines, but there is no one right dose. This is a good reason for starting at a low dose and climbing up. But there is that's my answer. I don't know if Paul would think that was a good enough answer. Paul, was that reasonable?
Before we go back to Larry, Jeff has a question he put in the chat. Has there been any discussion of becoming castration resistant on the estradiol?
Becoming castrate resistant. If I live long enough, my cancer will come back. I still have micromets. All forms of hormonal therapy, including ADT, which crash your testosterone, are not the same as chemotherapy. They're not toxins that kill the cells. They are toxins that keep the cells from growing. Some of them might die of old age. But basically, if the cells are still there, a little cosmic ray can come by and damage them. It makes a double-strand break. You have a chance of it mutating. So the longer I live, the longer I have a chance of getting the cancer coming back. But it's not because I'm on hormonal therapy. It's because I have the cancer cells and I'm living longer. And cosmic rays are around all the time. Not much I can do about it. Cosmic rays are causing breaks in chromosomes in multiple times every second we're alive. But we have repair mechanisms. If you have BRCA mutations, you haven't got quite the repair mechanism. But there's not a risk, the ADT, nor is there any greater risk at this point that I can think of mechanistically that ADT with estradiol is more likely to lead to castrate resistant than ADT with any other a form or any other drug program. What will matter really is how many cancer cells you have alive in your body and how badly mutated are they at that time.
So let me rephrase Jeff's question.
Okay.
We know that if you deplete all of your testosterone using an LHRH drug, or maybe using an ARSI and even not depleting the testosterone, that the cancer is going to find a way around it, and eventually it's going to continue to grow, whether it makes its own testosterone from other enzymes, whatever it does, it's going to find a way to grow. The question I think Jeff is asking, and I'm asking now, is if we suppress testosterone using estrogen, will the cancer that's present in your body find another way around that and find a way to get to testosterone, make its own testosterone using E2 as the suppressant?
I'll say I don't know of any evidence that would say E2 feeds prostate cancer. I have gone through all the stages of castrate, non-metastatic, castrate, metastatic disease, and I've been on estrogen the whole time. Now, am I thinking I wouldn't be in this state had I been on Lupron? No, I'm not thinking that. The biology is castrate T, whether it be an orchiectomy to produce it, or an agonist or an antagonist, or estrogen. So, could there be a glimmer of change biologically that makes estrogen carcinogenic? I'll never say never, but it would. Nothing that I know of, read, or know about computes to that answer.
No, but I don't mean that the estradiol is carcinogenic. What I'm saying is that when the cancer cannot find testosterone in the body for whatever reason, we know that it finds a way to survive by feeding itself in other ways.
All right.
My question is, could that happen on estradiol just like it happens on LHRH drugs or ARSI drugs?
Yes, but for the same reason. Hold on, Larry. For the same reason, which is an evolutionary reason. The most important thing you're ever going to do in your life. Now, my original training is in evolutionary biology. I have a PhD in evolutionary biology. What matters in evolution is, and Rick, I don't know if you have kids or not, but the most important thing you do is reproduce. If you ask yourself, what does the PSA molecule do? Prostate gland makes a huge amount of PSA. PSA is a huge component of semen. Semen lets the sperm cells free to go find an egg. This is such an important part that evolution has selected for these cells to keep on trucking and keep on trucking and keep on trucking. Okay. And if we can suppress their growth, they're going to say, wait a second, I have to be growing because I'm going to have to make semen because I want to make semen so you can reproduce and have descendants. That's a Darwinian perspective. So ironically, the same molecule that allows us to estimate and test where we stand with our cancer is designed to reproduce, and the evolutionary drive, the Darwinian drive for these cells to keep on trucking, okay, is got to keep on happening, and no ADT that we have alone that just deprives them of testosterone is going to block them from thinking. That was bad thinking. That was anthropomorphizing. It's going to mute their evolutionary drive to try to grow and try to still produce PSA. And in fact, stupidly with cancer, they get to a point where they say, I just got to divide. I can't, it's too important. We need more cells. We need more prostate cells. So I'm going to make more of them, even though they've stopped making PSA. It's a tragedy. This is why ADT is non-curative. All right. But at this point,
So
sorry.
Bottom line here is the same mechanisms that would cause prostate cancer cells to become resistant to ADT because of the low testosterone. Estradiol is going to cause the same. It'll have the same propensity to cause castration resistance, and
it doesn't cause castration resistance. Castration resistance is going to happen, but it's not caused by the ADT.
Mm-hmm. We know it's not caused by it, but well, I'm not so sure you can say that because let's say the cancer cells, one of the mechanisms is they ramp up the number of testosterone receptors, right? If you only have 20 micrograms of testosterone, they'll ramp up those receptors to grab what little testosterone there is. The same thing would happen if you're on estradiol.
When you get to that point, even cholesterol itself can stimulate the growth. Yeah, this mechanism is so driven to keep the cells alive, so that it isn't going to be the cells are going to decide that they're going to make their own testosterone or whatever they need to divide, which is tragic. But at the same time, I'll give you a different perspective. My long-term view on this is I've had 25 years of ADT, a few years of Lupron to begin with. Now, for me, I'm going to die anyway of something. But I have effectively, for my personal situation, converted my prostate cancer into a chronic disease. Well, many of us may have heart problems, maybe taking cholesterol, statin drugs to manage cholesterol, insulin to manage diabetes. If everybody could get a good 20 years of reasonable, good quality of life when they had biochemical progression after their primary treatment, that is damn good. Okay. Otherwise, I could have been on Lupron. I could have had a broken hip by now. Okay, or a car accident from sleep deprivation or whatever. But there's the ADT is non-curative.
I'm not arguing against the case for estradiol. I'm just answering the question raised by Jeffrey, which was, can estradiol also result in castration resistance? The simple answer is yes.
Yes, right. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. We wanted to go back to
Larry.
Larry, go ahead.
On that question, I've I don't like castrate resistance. I prefer the term hormone independent or androgen independent. Castrate is such an ugly word. Anyhow, I was concerned about castrate hormone independence in my prostate cancer. So I went through the literature. There's at least a half a dozen different ways that prostate cancer can become independent. And estrogen, maybe, the literature is unclear on this, the research has not been done, might have ways to suppress that. Estrogen receptor alpha seems to promote the possibility of cancer growth. Estrogen receptor beta has a cancer growth suppressive function. But again, this is not proven. This is early, investigations. But yeah, the fact that we have men who have been on estrogen for 20 years kind of supports the idea that estrogen has some kind of way of suppressing the hormone independence of the prostate cancer beyond what the LHRH analogs do.
It's a little more complicated, but the cell biology shows that it's true that if the alpha receptors are dominant and they're stimulated, it will cause prostate cancer growth. And beta receptors low. But if you start low enough and you maintain the control, you will maintain the beta receptor density, presumably. But that's only cell culture, Larry. That's not been shown for humans as far as I
know. Jeffrey, go ahead.
So, given that my doctor has suggested I'm eligible to take a break from the ADT therapy, the Eligard, and the Nubeqa, it's a thought at least to get on the E2 to just kind of cover that base and not have the side effects. So that's that was my only comment. Thanks.
All right, listen, guys, this is going on quite a while here. How about we have a 5-minute warning here and let's wrap things up. Anybody have anything really needs to be said?
I have 3 questions that I wanted to answer.
Is it going to be?
Can you do it in 5 minutes, Larry? Because it's getting really late.
I will be quick.
Okay.
Number 1.
Len's going to cut in 5 minutes. Just telling you.
Yeah. ADT drugs drop estrogen along with testosterone, and this the estrogen deficiency that causes many of the side effects. Not all of them, but some of them. And low dose supplement or estrogen substitution for standard ADT relieves those side effects. I'm not taking these in order, but somebody asked about advanced prostate cancer. The Estradiol Initiative is not talking about this right now, but the FDA still has an approval on the books for palliative care for advanced prostate cancer using injectable estradiol valerate. So that's that. When I first found out that I was going to need ADT, I made a deep dive into research, ranked all the different ADTs I could find in order of the tolerability of their side effects. And I looked at insulin resistance, because I'm already diabetic, bone loss, which is permanent. And I did not want to go chasing side effects like playing a game of whack-a-mole with drugs. So estradiol floated to the top. So I figured it was a good bargain. I will take having bosoms over having weak bones any day of the week. And I decided intellectually that if I get bosoms, as long as they're symmetrical, shapely, and small enough to pass the pencil test, I would take them.
Sorry, is there a question here, or are you just giving us your story? You really need to wrap it up.
Those are the 3 answers I held because, I wanted to be polite. So those are them. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, it was a great discussion. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul and Richard Wassersug and Larry and whoever else participated. We'll see you next week on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern with Dr. John.
Thanks for listening. Take care. Good night.
Thank you, gents. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks.